one and all, and listen to tales of excitement and adventure. Tales of daring heroes, savage monsters, and bards who just couldn't keep it in their pants. Tales of friendship, nobility, drunken foolishness, and unforgettable fun. These are tales of role-playing games, fair listeners, and this is Rollin' Bones. My name is Ryan Howard, and I shall be your guide. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Danishes and Dragons, your RPG morning show. My name is Ryan Howard. I am your host and King of the Boneheads, and today we are doing a review of a Kickstarter project that I backed all the way back in, I believe, April, possibly May. But this is something that we've discussed on the show before. You know, we had the creator Shane Lacey Hensley on, and that is, of course, Deadlands: The Weird West, the Suede update for Deadlands. So we'll be looking at that. It is now available to people everywhere via PDF. That is currently available on their website, on Pinnacle Entertainment's website. So you can pick that up if you like what you see on the show today. Physical editions are not ready yet. I don't think they'll be ready until early 2021, probably January or February. So basically, what I'm waiting for as a Kickstarter backer, and anyone else who is also a Kickstarter backer is waiting on these things as well. We're waiting on the physical copy of the core rulebook and the companion, both of which I'll show you guys today. There is a box set coming called Horror at Headstone Hill that we got as Kickstarter backers as well. That's coming in 2021 also. There are currently adventures available for those of you who are not necessarily comfortable creating your own adventures for Deadlands, which I kind of fall into that category. I've not really done a successful Deadlands adventure yet, so we'll see how successful I am. I'm really going to be using Savage Expeditions as a test run for how well I can create my own Deadlands game. And seeing if I can adapt my style and my love of Old West history with the advice that Shane gave me about front-loading monsters and then trying to hook people with the history. Because if you lead with the history, no one cares. No one cares at all, apparently. I even had to remind them of the dates of the real Civil War before I got into how the alternate Civil War that plays out in Deadlands ends up. So, before we get into that, though, let's discuss breakfast. Because this is, of course, Danishes and Dragons. So I didn't really do anything too terribly special today. I made myself eggs and bacon. One thing that I've been doing with my eggs is putting cream cheese in them every now and then. It's an extra flavor. It, makes things really interesting. It's delicious. Let me spread out my tripod here so the camera's a little bit more straight oriented. There we go. We can do a lot better than this. Come on now. Be better. Now we're all whoppy-jawed. These are the kind of things that I should work out before I go live, but, sometimes you don't catch them until you're on the air. All right, there we go. That's pretty good. So, anyway, like I was saying, I've been putting cream cheese in my scrambled eggs every now and then. It gives them a nice kind of creamy texture. Sometimes eggs can be a little, if they're bad, they can be very dry. But It's good to have like another texture in there. Scrambled eggs are a good like multi-textural food. It's one of the reasons why my dad hates them. He doesn't like anything that's got like two competing textures in it. He also thinks eggs are slimy, which he's correct if you do them wrong. If you do them right, then they aren't slimy at all. Unless you put cream cheese in them. But then they're more creamy than anything else. But no, basically what I do is I mix the scrambled eggs with milk, and then I put the cream cheese in, just like chop it up into squares, put it in, and then just cook the eggs as normal, make sure that everything's distributed evenly. Carl, good morning. How we doing? I'm just talking about putting cream cheese in my scrambled eggs. Welcome to the show. Have you ever tried that? I don't know if it's made its way over there or if... I don't know. How do people in the Philippines typically like their eggs? Carl, do you guys do scrambled eggs? Like, how do people over there typically eat their eggs when they eat eggs? Okay, cool. Gotcha. Yeah, I love me some scrambled eggs. I actually do like eggs over easy as well. The problem with those is they're extremely messy, and I have a beard. So you guys can, add those pieces together and come up with the reason why I don't eat over easy or over medium eggs very often. But yeah, that's pretty much the cream cheese and the scrambled eggs. It's really good. Something that Elfie actually turned me on to. Oh yeah, well omelets are always good. I imagine there's probably someone in like every country that it's morning right now, making some variation on the omelet. Hot dog omelets. Does he use like store-bought hot dogs, or are they like fancy hot dogs? Is he using like some kind of kielbasa or some other kind of fancy sausage, or is he just using like a Nathan's hot dog that he puts in an omelet? Or does he cut up the hot dog and put it throughout the... Okay, gotcha. Does he cut it up, or does he use the omelet like it's a hot dog bun? Okay, all right. I mean, that's basically a sausage omelet, just with hot dogs, so... Yeah, that's not the weirdest application I have seen of hot dogs in another recipe. When I was in Peru one time, the first night that we got to the camp we were staying at, they made us fried rice. Well, yeah, you got to put cheese in there. Hot dogs with cheese is actually a very underrated thing. I'll get to that in just a second. But, we got to this camp in the jungle in Peru. They're like, all right, we're going to make you guys some fried rice for dinner this evening. Okay, I'll have some fried rice. Not what I was expecting when I got to Peru, but yeah, fried rice is good. And it was like regular fried rice, but they put hot dogs in it. Which, it didn't taste bad. Was it what I was expecting from fried rice? No. I mean, typically I eat pork fried rice. Chicken fried rice is good too. Beef fried rice, There's this whole, like, spectrum of acceptable meats that go in fried rice. Hot dogs was not on that spectrum for me. And I had it, and I was like, I've had hot dog fried rice now. That's an experience. But yeah, you got to put cheese on the hot dog omelet. Omelets need cheese. I will die on that hill. It's a necessary component of an omelet because there has to be something to bind one side of the egg to the other side of the egg. And a lot of times that's going to end up being cheese, because cheese melts. If you don't have that, then you basically have an omelet that could fly open at any second. And if you're trying to eat an omelet on a motorcycle, that's going to be a problem for you. Then again, if you're trying to eat an omelet on a motorcycle, you've already got problems. Namely that you're eating something that requires a fork and a knife on a motorcycle. I don't know why that was the first thing I jumped to. I don't own a motorcycle. I've never tried to eat an omelet on a motorcycle. I've never even ridden one. But I imagine somewhere out there, someone has tried to eat an omelet on a motorcycle. Because people do weird things with food. A good friend of mine one time snuck a calzone into a movie theater. And I still don't understand the logistics of how he got it in there. He's explained the story to me multiple times, but I don't understand how he pulled it off. As someone who's worked in a movie theater, I can tell you, we don't care what you bring in. I mean, the sign says no outside food. A manager might stop you, but your average movie theater employee is paid minimum wage and does not care if you make some kind of effort to sneak food in. If you just walk in with it in your hands, not even like trying to hide it, we're going to call you on that because you're insulting our intelligence. But if you like at least like put the pizza box under your shirt and walk in, I may go, that's an interesting gut you have there. Most people's don't come out square. I probably wouldn't say that to a customer. That's a great way to get a manager called over. But no, when I worked in the movie theater, my oh, sweet. Go for it. I don't mind lurking. But no, whenever someone would come in and not make any kind of effort to hide something, there was an ice cream shop down the street. They'd come in holding their ice cream. I'd be like, you need to finish that before you go into the movie. But if they made any attempt at concealment, anything like that, like if I could see a Coca-Cola bottle in someone's purse, I wasn't going to say anything. But if you walk in holding a 2-liter and you're like, I'm going to go see my movie now, I'm going to stop you. It would be like, you need to leave that 2-liter out here. If you wrap up the 2-liter like it's a baby, you're good to go. If you walk in holding a banana in your hand, I'm going to kick you out or tell you to leave the banana. If you put a banana in a holster, though, you're good to stay. Walk on in. North Carolina was an open carry state, so bring your banana in. Still is an open carry state. So it's Tennessee. Which is good to know if you are, in fact, a cowboy. Reminds me of the meme that I saw. I don't know if you guys have seen it. There we go. Here it is. Yeah, there's this meme that kind of circulates around social media every now and then that I love. We have those too. When I was working in movie theaters, though, Carl, what would happen was, or what was happening was there was this revolution of there are these dine-in theaters. It was still kind of a fancy thing. Still a thing like not everyone did. AMC's hadn't converted into like every single theater serves food. And I was working at a Regal theater, and Regal is like the Dollar General of movie theaters, in my opinion, having worked for them. And so we were kind of, sort of, trying to keep up with the Joneses in that regard. And we were offering things like you can get a hot dog. We've got small pizzas that will give you the concession stand. We didn't have the menus or anything like that. We did serve beer and wine. But to cook the cooked food, and we had, like chicken nuggets and stuff like that. To cook the cooked food, we had one toaster oven for the entire concession stand. And you can imagine on a Friday or Saturday night, that one oven was not cutting it. And I can never figure out why people... I do know the reason why. People don't have time management skills. But people would come in. I understand at a dine-in theater, like you can get a cheeseburger and fries, or you can get actual food at a lot of these places. Some of the more fancy, like Alamo Draft House, I'd eat dinner there. But at a Regal theater that is not like a dine-in theater, why would someone be like, I'm just going to eat dinner at the movies? And then they get mad at us about how expensive the food was. I'm like, you knew about this. You knew that you were going to be paying $8 for a single hot dog. And, you're not going to leave the concession stand feeding a family of 4 for less than $50. I'm sorry to tell you. But this is old knowledge. I was watching an episode of Animaniacs from 1993. And they made a joke in that episode of Animaniacs from 2 years before I was born about how expensive movie theater food is. This is not new. Movie theater food has been expensive for quite some time. It's how they make their money. Because all of the money that you paid your ticket for, that goes to the people, yeah. Yes, yeah. It's 400 pesos for a hot dog, yes. That's what we're talking about. And this is not like a general thing across the United States. This is just in movie theaters. Movie theaters will charge you ridiculous prices here for, food. Because, again, that's how they make their money. All the money that you give to see the movie, that goes to the studio. The movie theater gets a very, very, tiny percentage of the ticket money. Yeah. So how does the movie theater continue to exist? And why are movie theaters going to this, sit-down dining experience where you can have actual food and get beer and milkshakes and sometimes boozy milkshakes? I've seen it at a couple movie theaters. It's to keep people buying the food and to keep people, spending money on the actual thing that makes them money. Because if everyone decided, I'm just going to sneak a calzone into the movie and no one bought the popcorn or anything like that, then the movie theater is going to shut down. So that is the economics of why movie theater popcorn and hot dogs and all that stuff is super expensive, and why you should probably sneak in your own candy and eat before you come to the movie. And if you really want popcorn, it's not all that terribly expensive. It kind of is. And if you get popcorn but don't get a drink, you're probably going to want to kill yourself midway through the movie. But all of our drinks are this big to beyond the parameters of this box that I have here. And if you drink one of those at least a quarter way through the movie, you're going to need to pee. Which, one last tangent before we get into Deadlands, because I'm talking about needing to pee in the middle of movies. There are a couple movies that I have held a pee for that I've been extremely disappointed in the fact that I held a pee for them. The most disappointing movie that I ever held a pee for was Avatar. James Cameron's Avatar. That movie started, a quarter of the way through, I had to pee. That movie's almost 3 hours long. In fact, it might actually be 3 hours long. I held a pee for the entire movie. Then by the end, when I realized it was Fern Gully, I was like, well, we've got 15 minutes left. Might as well keep it. That was a disappointment. I had no such qualms about peeing in the middle of Rise of Skywalker, by the way. I thought I was going to go through it for the long haul, but by, like, set piece number 4, I just was like, there's no reason for me to sit here. Nothing's going to happen for the next 5 minutes. I'm going to go pee. I'll be right back. And lo and behold, nothing of value was lost. Except for my time, the rest of the time I was sitting in that theater. Whew, I did not like that movie. Yes, the MacGuffin movie. Absolutely. That's exactly what Rise of Skywalker was. And I feel so terribly bad for fans of Dr. Seuss, because J.J. Abrams has your franchise now. Just ask the Trek and the Wars fans how it feels to have J.J. Abrams cradling your franchise in his arms. Although cradling your franchise in his arms is not exactly what he's doing. It's more like he's leaving you at Chuck E. Cheese. And remembering at the last minute, oh wait, I left my kid at Chuck E. Cheese. And then having to come up with a bunch of reasons why he left you at Chuck E. Cheese. But with lens flare. That's the J.J. Abrams story box method of, or mystery box method of storytelling. I forgot that I left my kid at Chuck E. Cheese, and now I have to come up with some kind of explanation as to why I did so. Now, without further ado, now that we have discussed ad nauseum the scrambled eggs and yes, Palpatine is alive. Here's the one more thing, just because you facepalm the moment that you saw that the message that Palpatine shot out in across the galaxy to announce that, hey, I'm still here. That was broadcast on Fortnite. That critical piece of storytelling for that movie happened on Fortnite. It wasn't a TV commercial. It didn't happen in the movie. God forbid something important happen in the movie. It happened on Fortnite. Well, now that I'm upset again, let's move over to something that makes me happy, namely Deadlands. I am going to shoot the fire across the screen, and we will end up taking a look at this fantastic package that Shane Hensley and company have created for those of us who love our cowboy stuff. And I'm over here now. Sweet. All right, so let's take a look at Deadlands here. This is the front cover. Let's switch over to this view here. I've got a couple of tabs pulled up here to show you guys, what we're working with as far as these products. So on this page, we've got the core rulebook for Deadlands, and then on this page over here, we have the Weird West Companion. So basically what this is just kind of an expanded list of archetypes, weapons, other, kinds of things. I believe there's more edges and hindrances as well. So that's what you can see. Yeah, Critical Role played Deadlands a few months ago. Actually, it might have even been at the end of 2019. They did a Deadlands campaign. I haven't watched their Deadlands because, again, I have not seen a single second of Critical Role. Yeah, Undeadwood. That was it. The only thing I was wondering about that show is, would they establish some kind of donation, charity type thing where, if you want to make a high noon joke, you have to donate a certain amount to this charity that we're putting this money towards. Otherwise, your high noon comments will be deleted by the moderators. Because apparently that's like the one thing of all the stuff that you can say to Matt Mercer. He doesn't mind, how do you want to do this or anything like that. But apparently the high noon stuff really gets on his nerves. Just like how overdone it is. At least that's what Kelly Butler told me, that he really gets annoyed by high noon jokes. Because for any of you who didn't listen to that episode that I did with the opera geek Kelly Butler, the first time she met Matt Mercer, she was being brought in as a surprise guest in a campaign that he was in to kill his character. And she had to psych herself up for saying to Matt Mercer, "How do you want me to do this?" Or maybe it was "How do I want to do this?" But I said, when you were killing Matt Mercer's character, did you grab a fistful of dice and yell, "Hey Mercer, it's high noon," and then throw them on the table? And she goes, No, he hates that. But if you are Matt Mercer and you're playing a gunslinger in a Deadlands campaign, you brought that on yourself, bud. But still, you don't want just all of chat to be high noon, high noon, high noon, high noon. So, you can say it's high noon if you put $5 aside that we're going to give to, I don't know, Second Harvest or starving children somewhere or UNICEF or whatever. But yeah. Still have not seen a single second of Undead Wood or Critical Role, or really any of the Geek and Sundry shows. One that I'm very interested in is watching Will Friedle paint. And I'd love to have him on the show and talk about painting. Because I've gotten my sisters to agree that they will watch the episode of the show that I do where I talk to Eric Matthews. That is the only time I can get my sisters to watch this show, is if I get Will Friedle on the show. Yeah, I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Maybe someday I'll get to it. I'm kind of a contrarian where the super popular thing I kind of avoid. I did the same thing with Stranger Things for the longest time until I was forced to watch all of it in a single weekend. I think I watched the entirety of season 4 in a day. Not by my choice. I was invited to a party where this happened, but yeah, I think a lot of people, Carl, honestly discovered Critical Role organically. They just kind of found it, and then because they found Critical Role, they decided they wanted to play D&D. That happened with several friends of mine who I used to play with. And Shag, I am so glad that you have also not seen Critical Role. Sometimes I feel like I'm the only one in the universe. Makes me feel like a grumpy old man when people are like, "Oh, I'm so excited for that Critical Role book that 5th edition's putting out," and I'm like, why not play with their own IPs? I don't care about this Critical Role thing that you kids are watching. I just want a Dark Sun book. Is it too much to ask for? Maybe a little bit. I don't think so, but Hasbro probably thinks so. So, without further ado, let's take a good little look-see here at Deadlands. So, just as a reminder to anyone who is interested in playing Deadlands, the book that you see here on the screen is not comprehensive. This is not the only thing you need to play. You also need this book right here that I'm holding up to the camera, which is the Savage Worlds Adventurers Edition core rulebook. This explains the central mechanics of how Savage Worlds works. That's the game engine that this is built on. It explains the whole concept of what dice you use, how cards work, all that kind of stuff. Action economy rounds, basics for character creation, and a few examples. That's what this book is for. This is your rule book. Deadlands is what would properly be described as a setting book or an expansion. Yeah, I mean, Carl, I saw people tweeting about Mastara as well. There does seem to be a little bit of burnout from Wizards of the Coast for all of the licensed products that they're putting out. We've had a Stranger Things box set. We had a Rick and Morty box set. That Baldur's Gate thing was just like, here's Joe Manganiello's character. He's now canon. And then they did the whole Critical Role thing and the Acquisitions Incorporated thing, which I know that the guy from Acquisitions Incorporated works for them. So that makes sense that they would kind of bring that into the fold. And it's a cool idea. But there's been a lot of, let's focus on this licensed stuff and bring in this kind of broader audience. But there are entire sectors of their IP that they've kind of ignored. I know there's the Curse of Strahd book, which also kind of serves as a Ravenloft book, but expanding on Ravenloft would be cool. And of course, there's no Dark Sun whatsoever. There's no Planescape whatsoever. So 5th edition is big enough for all of these things. Let's have some 5th edition Planescape or some 5th edition Dark Sun. Or some 5th edition Spelljammer if you feel so inclined. So, anyway, Deadlands, like I said at the top, is created by Shane Lacey Hensley. Matthew Cutter was helping him out with the design on this time around. You've got some additional material here that's created by some of the other usual suspects when it comes to Pinnacle. Clint Black, Jody Black. Obviously, there was some interior graphic design done by Carl Kiesler, of course, because Carl is the man. So yeah, you've kind of got your just usual suspects of Savage Worlds people working on this book. There's a lot of interior art here. A lot of it's really good. Haven't seen anything that's bad. Apparently, this is the 24th anniversary of Deadlands. Honestly, I'm glad that we're getting this now. I might have put it off 1 year just to get that 25. But still, I'm glad that we have it now. So, table of contents, standard fare. Here's a nice little piece. Pretty cool. Undead cowboy, undead horse. The kind of stuff you typically expect from stuff like this. You've got this is something that I really like about Shane's books. He's really good at this expository text that comes from the world of the game. So I'll read a little bit of this to you guys. It's interesting how Shane does stuff like this to, just kind of make you feel a part of the world. So I don't care what trouble you think I'm mixed up in, Marshall. I ain't leaving town. First off, you ain't got no right to make me go. Them rumors of rustling down in Texas is more misunderstanding. And the whole Killer Cade nonsense is a load of bullchips. Second, I ain't leaving civilization. Not while it's out there. Don't give me that look. You ain't no greenhorn and you've ridden the high plains more'n once. You know there's things out there that ain't in no school book. I ain't talking about prairie ticks and tummy twisters and tumbleweeds or any old haint or spirit. Everyone knows those are real. I'm talking about the kind of things you read about in the tombstone epitaph. Hell yes, I can read. I graduated the 6th grade. And keep that hand away from that smoke wagon, Marshall. Don't forget I'm faster than you. I don't want to put you in the ground, but if you won't back down, I ain't got much choice. See, there's something lurking on the trail outside of town. Waiting. And it wants me bad. If I didn't know better, I'd swear it was old Moses Moore, the hanging judge out of Dallas. But he's dead. Hung along the Chisholm years back, I heard tell. But I met him when I was no bigger than a grasshopper, and that thing out there looks just like him. Gunned down 3 of my friends, and I heard it whispering my name over and over. Cade, rustling, hanging, it said. So, obviously what he's talking about there is the hanging judge, which is a nice little piece of Deadlands history. It's a cool monster. I really love it. It's one of my favorites that Deadlands has to offer. But those like in-character things that Shane puts in there, I don't know if anyone's read the original Deadlands book, but it's almost entirely written in the first person. Like from the perspective of a reporter for the Tombstone Epitaph. It's really cool. I love it. I love it a lot. Anyway, from here we get into a little, explanation of the Deadlands history. For anyone who's unfamiliar, again, there have been several changes to, our own history here. The Civil War, as we know it, ended in 1865, just in real history. In Deadlands, the Civil War went all the way up to 1871. So, when people do, steampunk U.S. history or alternate U.S. history set in the Wild West, what you typically end up with is the Civil War dragging on for far longer than it typically would have. This happens in the Clockwork Century series as well. Some great American steampunk books by Sherry Priest there. If you need inspiration for a Deadlands game, that's a good place to go. Those books are fantastic. I need to get back to those and finish that series. I have all the books, but it really is a fantastic series. Anyway, the reason this happens is you can see all of these historical design documents for essentially steampunk things, like steam-powered tanks and all kinds of crazy weird things that, came about as a result of war, because as I heard Sherry Priest once say in a panel that she was on with Jim Butcher, the two things that push technology forward more than anything else are the pornography industry and war. And in the midst of, the 1860s, 1870s, if the Civil War drags on as long as it does, you get some of these, advanced technologies. And, see some of these cool things come about. And with a fantasy setting like this, you can greatly exaggerate what ends up coming about as a result of the Civil War dragging on. And in Deadlands, a lot of this is a result of a discovery of an alternate fuel source called ghost rock, which has not been explained, probably will never be explained, or maybe it will be. The origins of ghost rock are still mysterious. It's one of those things that if you explain it at this point, you're just going to end up being disappointed with what it is. So it's best to keep it mysterious. But it basically burns cleaner and more efficient than coal. The only downside to it potentially is, when it's burnt, it has this screaming noise, and the smoke that comes out of it looks ghostly almost. It's a really cool thing. but it powers a lot of the innovation that you find in the world of Deadlands. And so there's a couple, alternate events that happen. There was the Great Quake of 1868, which basically broke the coast of California into several pieces. And so there's this, sea labyrinth in California now. And that's where Ghost Rock comes from. It's found in the cracks of the world when California breaks apart, and because of that, that's where these technology advances come from. And so you get steam wagons and autogyros and a bunch of crazy new inventions. And so this is Wild West steampunk, for lack of a better word. And basically, the way that the war is resolved is there's the Battle of Washington in 1871, which is a gigantic to-do. In the original Deadlands and in Reloaded, the battle happens, but just the war continues. What happened, and so basically in the old Deadlands, the North and the South are still at war and still separate nations. The Confederacy and the Union are still apart. What happens now, due to the Morgana effect, which we'll get to in a little bit, and due to Shane's desire to kind of move the story forward and put a different spin on things, the Civil War ends with a Union victory in 1871 at the Battle of Washington, and the southern states are still, they are, back in the Union. There's still some tension, still some people holding on to the cause, like there was in real life. But there's other nations as well now. A lot of the Native American tribes have kind of formed their own nations and confederacy. The Mormons turned Utah into its own country of Deseret. And then, the two major Confederate states now are the Sioux Nations and the Coyote Confederation. And they basically have split off from the United States. There's some tension still over Deadwood and Ghost Rock mining in the Black Hills. So that's still there, and you can still kind of mess around with those historical stories of, kind of the Dakotas, specifically South Dakota, and that tension. And then the Coyote Confederation is kind of at odds with the former Confederate states that used to be their allies. Now that they're gone, there's a lot of tension and a lot of unrest within those. And then the things that kind of, hold the world together, there's this nationally circulated tabloid paper called the Tombstone Epitaph, which reports on supernatural goings-on within the world of Deadlands. Most people don't believe a lot of what happens in the Epitaph, but the Epitaph is very real. It's kind of like how in Men in Black, when Agent K is buying up those tabloid magazines, and he goes, "This is the best investigative journalism that you'll find on Earth." That's kind of what the Tombstone Epitaph is in this case. There's the Explorer Society, which is your, kind of, alliance of explorers, your Cecil Rhodes type people. Only less colonial. And then you've also got the U.S. Marshals and the Territorial Rangers. We'll get to those in a little bit. And what this does is kind of, break out the different sections of the Weird West here. So you've got the Great Plains across, Colorado, Kansas, Montana, Wyoming. It was devastated by both the Civil War and the Great Rail Wars, which is another event that happened in the past of Deadlands. And so it's kind of just this like former battlefield that's been torn up and stuff like that. You can still find your idyllic scenery and stuff like that there, but for the most part, this is a place that's been fought over. Then you have the Great Basin, which is Southern California and Nevada. And it's kind of like the worst place on Earth. Like it's been, this is like the dead zone of Deadlands. This is the part of Dark Sun where like the whole place has been turned into obsidian due to just some like undead nonsense. That's what the Great Basin is. It's that's where you go to die. So obviously you want to steer your players towards going to the Great Basin. Then from there you have the Great Maze, which we've already talked a little bit about. The Great Maze, like I said, is the coast of California, which is now a bunch of like flooded sea channels. People mine the canyon walls for ghost rock and other things. And then there's the Free City of Los Angeles, which is basically just a city. It's Los Angeles, but splintered. There's a Chinese warlord that's trying to take over pieces of the coast. The U.S. government is they still have interests there, so there's a lot of conflict there. The Northwest is, Washington, Oregon, Idaho. There's a lot of kind of brutal winter monsters that live there, but they're still, logging and trapping and stuff like that. But that's kind of like your winter area. If you want to do like a harsh winter story like, The Searchers or the very beginning of Red Dead 2, you go to the Pacific Northwest and, have like Yetis attack your party or something like that. And then there's Deseret, which is Utah. It's an independent Mormon nation. Salt Lake City, or the City of Gloom, as they call it here. It's called the City of Gloom because there's this constant haze of ghost rock around it. And then there's the Smith and Robards and Hellstrom Industries that are in Deseret, and they kind of produce technology and manufacturing and stuff like that. And then there are Salt Rattlers, which are basically your sandworms of the setting. They're all over Deseret. They're in the salt flats. And yeah, they're fast and terrifying, and they'll kill you. The Sioux Nation. These are like the Lakota Sioux and the other Sioux tribes that make up this nation in the Northern Cheyenne Mountains. Oh, no, those are the Northern Cheyenne tribes. They basically live on what would be the Sioux sacred territory there. And they have, kind of an uneasy peace with all of the other nations. They're kind of their own thing. The U.S. government is still trying to push in. They've got Deadwood still, and yeah. Well, welcome to the show here. I'm not sure how you say that name. Almchug. But yeah, Deadlands is a lot of fun, and I'm super excited to actually play in this setting. I am over the moon that this exists now. But then you've got the Coyote Confederation, similar to the Sioux Nation, but less stable. Their leadership is a little bit more back and forth. They're not as centralized as the Sioux. They used to be allied with the Confederate soldiers. But, with the Confederacy gone now, there's a little bit of concern about kind of the stability there. Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona make up the Southwest. Most of these places are territories. The apparently the like most happening town in the Southwest is Tombstone. Of course, the Earps and the Cowboy Gang. That happened in Tombstone. There, all of the like historical figures of the Wild West are still around in Deadlands. Again, for anyone who's not familiar, they just have this like new twist on them. One of my favorites is Wild Bill Hickok. I'll talk about him in a little bit. But yeah, once the Earps were gone and the Cowboys were gone, people thought that Tombstone would be stable. No, of course not. But one interesting thing about the Southwest, which we'll get into a little bit, and some of the other places, the U.S. Marshals are the equivalent of like the FBI in this game. They are the representatives of the United States that show up in all of the actual states. The Territorial Rangers are the other side. They come out of the Texas Rangers organization, which in the world of Deadlands used to be like the FBI for the Confederacy. But now, Texas is a state, and they get to keep their Rangers because Texas gets to be special. Even in real life, Texas gets to be special. Because Texas has not forgotten that it was once a republic of its own. So they get their own ranger force, and then all of the other territories, like Wyoming, Arizona, New Mexico, they all have their own force of territorial rangers that all report back to the Texas Rangers. So, another nice piece of art here, some zombies. And we get into making your heroes. So yeah, I've already gone over this in my review of Suede, which again, I'll hold up the book here. This is the book you're looking for to play this particular version of Deadlands. If you're playing Reloaded, you'll need the Explorer's Edition. This is the Adventurer's Edition. It's the most up-to-date version of the rules, and this is what you'll need to play this recent version of Deadlands. Character creation is largely done in this book. What we have here, in addition to the regular rules of character creation, are these kind of Western concepts, or these Western character, not classes, because there are no classes in Savage Worlds, character archetypes. So what's added here are the Blessed. These are your clergy, or your... you can play them as like Western versions of paladins as well. Basically anyone who's got like holy abilities. Then you've got a bounty hunter, because you have to. Chi Master. Shag, if you're still on, this is something you'd be interested in. You can do the kung fu thing and be like a martial artist in a cowboy world. So that's awesome. That's a fusion that I love to see. It's one of the reasons why The Warrior's Way was one of my most disappointing films, because I thought it would be samurais and cowboys, and it was just weirdness. You can be a common person if, for some reason, in a game where you can shoot zombies with a 6-shooter and there's giant sandworms in Utah, you just want to be a store owner, I guess you can do that if you really, really want to. Deserter, former soldier who ran away, drifter, escort. Yeah, you can be a saloon gal if you want, or a hooer if you're Danny DeVito. There's a box here that explains how, contrary to what ended up happening in real life, due to the dearth of manpower with a just long war that lasted for a decade, women were allowed to become soldiers, become entrepreneurs, politicians, explorers, all that stuff. So if you're concerned about, playing a female character in a world that historically didn't let women do a lot of things, this is basically saying, don't worry, you can do whatever you want. And I failed to mention at the beginning, this game is set in 1884. So you're well after the war and all that stuff. But yeah, this is here just to say you don't have to worry about, someone being like, well, I ain't never seen a woman colonel before. Because they have. And you got a few more explorers, grifters. Hucksters are one of the more interesting aspects of Deadlands. For anyone who's unfamiliar, a huckster is basically a magical gambler. You're a cowboy wizard, essentially, but your magic comes from gambling with the devil, essentially. And so you can throw cards around, and sometimes you can be a hex slinger, which is a magical gunslinger. And your bullets are magical, and your guns are magical as well. It's really cool. It's really cool. In some editions, it's been super OP. But yeah, hucksters and hex slingers are super interesting. You can be an immigrant. As you guys know, the Old West was a weird melting pot and amalgamation of different societies. As, the Chinese and the Japanese came from the coasts. The Irish, the Germans, the Swedes came from the other side. And a lot of people sought their fortune in the untamed world of the West. That's still very much present, so you can be a former slave, you can be a Chinese immigrant, an Irish immigrant. There's all kinds of different people groups that melded in the Old West in real life, and in Deadlands it's been turned up to 11 because of all of the craziness that happened in the ensuing decades. So essentially anything you can think of, you can be in Deadlands. Indian shamans, Indian warriors, lawmen, or law dogs as they call them, mad scientists. Yes, you can be a mad scientist. Mad scientists are very interesting in Deadlands. Muckraker, if you want to be a Tombstone epitaph reporter. You can do that. You can be a prospector, an outlaw, of course, soldier. And so the way that you, make your heroes, just as a reminder, I'll go ahead and open this up just to explain again how you make Savage Worlds characters. The first thing you pick is your race. Everything here is pretty much going to be humans. You just kind of, pick your ethnicity, essentially. You're not going to be able to play an elf in Deadlands. At least not at my table. I'm sorry. No elves in Deadlands. No dwarves in Deadlands. And then from there, you go to your hindrances. These are flaws and drawbacks. We'll get to what specifically those are. You assign your die types. Everyone starts with a D4 in each attribute. Again, just as a reminder, your attributes in Deadlands are agility, smarts, spirit, strength, and vigor. Everyone starts with a D4 in each of those, and you've got 5 points to raise your attributes. It costs 1 point to raise an attribute by one die type. You can go all the way up to a D12. And you can spend 2 points to raise one attribute by one die type. I believe that's for further advancement. From there, you've got skills. This is a very skill-focused game. Everyone gets athletics, common knowledge, notice, persuasion, and stealth. So everyone gets one of those. And skills, again, have die types. So you've got 12 points to buy your skills. And this is a game where you end up with a butt ton of skills. Skills are largely how you do things. So there's like a myriad number of skills that all have different things, and certain skills depend on each other. And they're like skills are broken up into knowledge, trade, language. There's, combat stuff. From your traits, you find out your derived stats, your pace, which is your movement, parry, and your toughness. Parry is fighting, essentially, because, fighting is one of the skills that you'll have. And then you pick your edges. So the one of the best mechanics of Savage Worlds and Deadlands is the interplay between your edges and your hindrances. Unlike 5th edition, where your flaw is largely roleplay focused, your hindrances are actually mechanical. And I'll explain some of those when we get to the edges and hindrances that are added in this game. So there will be certain things that you can or cannot do, or you can't do as well, or that you can't have because of hindrances. But your hindrances give you more edges. And you can you can use up to 4 points to buy your hindrances. And then you can take those, for each 2 hindrance points spent, you choose another edge. So all humans start with 1 edge. With using 4 hindrance points, you end up with 2 additional edges. So when you're creating a character, you're going to start with 3 edges. Then you buy your gear. You start with $250 to buy gear. And you get an additional $500 for every 1 hindrance point. Then you fill out your background details, and you fill out what your worst nightmare is. So, some of the new hindrances that you get here. And then here's a box out explaining that slavery is no longer a thing in Deadlands. But racism is still very much alive. Because you have to have some kind of force of conflict where, especially with 2 nations that once fought each other, there's going to be conflict there. So yeah, bigotry, violence, racism, those are still around. It's up to you as the the game master to decide how much of that you want to get into. But this is where this is all explained. So you've got a few new hindrances here. Aelin, basically you can be sick. The severity of your chronic illness depends on whether or not it's a major or minor hindrance. Major hindrances count as 2, or 2 hindrance points. Minors only count as 1. Then you've got Cursed, Grim Servant of Death, Heavy Sleeper, Lion Eyes. These are all very Western focused. And then the same thing here with Old West. There's a box here that explains, how your edges should balance out as far as your archetypes are concerned. So you've got some background edges, like arcane background. This is where, if you want to be a priest, you'd pick the blessed background. If you want to be a chi master, you pick the chi master one. Huckster, mad scientist, shaman. Gallows humor is one of my favorites. Basically, you can use your taunt. If you put a lot in taunt as a skill, you can use that instead of spirit for your fear checks. And so that's basically, you use humor to cope with serious situations. That's your Harry Dresden, edge there. You can be a veteran of the Weird West. Then there's some combat edges here, like don't get them riled, duelist, which helps you in the dueling rules. You get 2 extra hole cards. We'll get into that in a little bit. Fan the Hammer is always good if you're using single action weapons. This lets you fire multiple times at a penalty for each shot instead of just using 1 shot per round. Quick Draw helps you get your gun out of your holster faster. Then you've got your professional edges. Basically, excuse me, if you want to be in a certain profession, some of these will require you to take edges. So if you are, if you want to be a U.S. Marshal, you'll need to take the agent one. Soldier is a professional edge as well. Taleteller, Territorial Ranger, if you want to be a Texas Ranger, like Walker. And from there, you've got Social Edge, Reputation, and there are several others in the Savage Worlds core rulebook that are also available to you. Weird Edges. Harrowed is your undead, which can happen. If you die, you can come back as a ghost cowboy or a zombie cowboy. Grit. Knack. Then you've got Legendary Edges, which are, once your character gets to a high level, you can start taking these. Nice piece of art here. Gear and goods. I'm going to take a quick break, and then we will continue discussing Deadlands, talk about the gear, talk about dueling, all that good stuff. All right, I'm back. Let's see what we've got left to discuss. I know we're going to discuss dueling. We're going to take a little bit of a look here at some of the gear that we've got. You don't get starting gear in Savage Worlds. Like I said earlier, you have to buy your gear. By the time get all your hindrances, or if you take like the wealthy edge, you start with 250, you get $500 for each hindrance point. So you end up with a thousand or more dollars to work with. Actually, you end up with like 2,000 plus if you take 4 points of hindrances, and then if you take the wealthy edge, or I think it's called Filthy Rich, actually, you get additional starting money to work with. Go ahead and pull that up. And there's lots of other examples of gear that you can find in Savage Worlds base book here. And a lot of the stuff that you find in the base book is going to be very applicable to your cowboys here, because in here you've got stuff like Two Gun Kid, which lets you use two pistols. You can use two-fisted as well for multi-attacks, as far as having two swords, marksman, rapid fire, double tap. Yeah, Filthy Rich. Basically, you inherit a fortune, and your yearly income is right around like $500,000 of local currency. And so you have basically 5 times the starting fund. So your $2,000 to start with ends up becoming $10,000 if you're wealthy or filthy rich. There's also famous, attractive, and very attractive. Those are important. So yeah, remember, you only have a certain number of edges that you can take, and while it seems weird to suddenly become attractive once you get more edges to take, you might have to do that just for the sake of, I need something to let me shoot my guns better or do what I'm supposed to be doing better, rather than I'm extremely good looking. But still, you don't actually need edges to shoot a gun well. You can put, you can invest heavily in the shooting skill, and then take the good-looking edge. So as far as common gear goes, everyone's going to need boots. You do have to buy, like, your clothing. So everyone's going to need boots. You can get buckskin armor, Native American shields, a winter coat. My favorite item that I would always invest money in is the duster. Long johns. This is one of the weaknesses, in my opinion, of Savage Worlds. Just how granular you can get with certain items that you would need. 5th edition assumes that you're running around with clothes on. Like, everyone starts with some kind of clothing or armor or something like that. Savage Worlds, if you don't buy your long johns, you're going commando. There's no, like, there's no issue with that. There's no like mechanical anything like that. That's it's not going to hurt your character in any way, but it's weird. It's weird that you have to like buy your underwear. And then you can also get Rattler hide items for anything leather, which gives you armor +2, and it's like 10 times the price. So your duster, a Rattler hide duster, is going to end up being $100. $80 for Rattler hide boots, but you get bonuses to it. And let's see, our hats here. No. Hats must be like down here, under general equipment. So, you've got your food and drink, bacon and coffee. That's all I need. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, cheap restaurant, trail rations. Again, you can get super granular here. Cigars, cigarettes, playing cards, all that kind of stuff. Here are your hats. Bonnet, derby, fedora, sombrero, and Stetson. And I guess, like in other books, you can probably get like a pith helmet. Here's a guy with a pith helmet. I'm not sure why it's not already in there. But yeah, I mean, stuff like that would be available. You could probably get one of those German helmets too. Why you would want one, I don't know. I guess it's cool, but you have to buy your spectacles. Of course, you've got your liquor prices. That's important. Services, transportation, ammunition. And from here, you get into like actual weapons. There's multiple different types of weapons that you need to kind of take into account. Because all of your guns have certain calibers. Arrows are arrows, but with your any weapon that you've got that has a small caliber, you're looking at $2 for a box of 50. Large caliber, your 40 to 50 caliber pistols, $3 for a box of 50. Same with your rifle ammunition. And then, interesting thing that you need to take into account, as far as pistol ammunition goes, some of these weapons are cap and ball weapons. So you'll need the pistol ammunition, but you'll also need percussion caps and shot. And of course, buckshot for your shotgun. So we'll get into that in a little bit. As far as melee weapons, you've got several, brass knuckles, bayonet, club, war club. So you've got your Native American weapons. You've got your lariats and your cavalry sabers, bolas, whip. You can make ghost steel out of like ghost rock, which again gives you bonuses, but also costs more, 5 times the listed price. Bowie knife. All kinds of cool stuff here. You can use swords. They're around. And you can find more swords in this book or in other Savage Worlds books if you want to just get like super crazy about the kind of sword you carry. If you want to carry a medieval falchion for some reason. And you've got your Gatling weapons. These are weapons that they're automatic weapons. These are your machine guns. And so you've got a Gatling carbine, Gatling rifle, Gatling shotgun, which seems dumb. Gatling pistol, and they cost a lot more. And then you have your full-on like turret Gatling gun, and then we get into pistols and stuff like that. Here's where I'll note some of the black powder weapons that you'll need to buy powder and shot for, like the English 1840 pepper box or Derringer. The Colt Army. An older Colt Army is a cap and ball weapon. Colt Dragoon is also a cap and ball weapon. Colt Navy is cap and ball. You've got your Peacemaker and your Lamat revolver. The Lamat revolver is a super fascinating weapon. In real life, it has an underslung 20 gauge shotgun shell that you can fire. It's cool. And then you've got your double action revolvers. These are all, except for the Star. The Star is apparently a cap and ball weapon, but everything else is cartridge weapons, and these let you you can use the double tap feature with them, which lets you shoot twice instead of once on your turn. But you cannot fan the hammer with these. And you got your carbines, and your rifles, shotguns. All of these are pretty cool. You've got your Winchester, your Sharps Big 50, your muskets. Got your sawed-off, double barrel, single barrel, and lever action shotguns. You can probably get a pump gun too. Although 1886, I don't know that you can get a pump shotgun. I'd have to check up on that. Then you've got your specialty weapons, your bolas. Explosives, you got dynamite and stuff like that. Vehicles. Water vehicles. And then you have the infernal devices. These are like the crazy things that you can get, like your steampunk weapons. You can also get like stealth shoes, a periscope hat, a gas mask. There's different elixirs, which can function as your health potions and stuff like that. Diving suits. Then you have your armor. And then you have your infernal weapons. Your flamethrower. Your steam Gatling, which is like a heavy weapon. It's like the Gatling gun in Predator, is your steam Gatling. Steam saw is basically like a chainsaw, essentially. Then you've got your steam wagons, your rail runners, kind of your automobile type things that run on steam and stuff like that. Velocipede is basically a motorcycle. You've got your motor-powered boats, and of course your airships, your air carriage, your autogyro, which is like a helicopter, ornithopter, also like a helicopter. The autogyro is like a smaller helicopter, though. Jetpacks, super gyros. Whirligig. Actually, the Whirligig's like a personal helicopter. And then you get into the Weird West, talking about how fast you can walk with your You know, how fast you can walk, how fast you can ride, stagecoaches, trains, money, all that kind of stuff. Telegraph. Talks about government mail, ghost rock. And then these are all just kind of like setting details here, which we can get into. The U.S. Army, you're mostly dealing with cavalry. There's going to be some conflicts with Native Americans and stuff like that as far as the Army goes. And this is good to know as far as, you know, like how to designate your Army's characters. It just kind of gives you an insight into what military ranks were broken up into in the 1800s. Then you've got the law. This is some interesting details here. You've got town marshals, county sheriffs, and then you've got U.S. marshals or rangers. And this is something that I think is interesting. You've got a table here of different crimes that you can break out on your players. And I do not doubt that these are taken from like real world lists of crimes that you could be charged for in the time of the Old West. But I love how some of these are broken up. So carrying a weapon in a no weapon zone is a confiscation and $10 fine. I would argue that there are no weapon zones because this is America. Disorderly, drunk in public, $10 fine, or a night in the drunk tank. A week to a year in prison if you steal less than $300 worth of stuff. Grand larceny is 5+ years. Theft of someone of authority is 5+ years. Theft of any kind, because, of course, if you're in charge, stealing from you is extra special, no good, bad. Interesting here. Theft from a widow, 20+ years. If you steal from a widow, you will go to jail for the same amount of time that you go for train or bank robbery. Very interesting. But yeah, theft from a widow, train, bank robbery, and attempted murder are all 20+ years. Unnatural acts, this would be acting as a huckster or using any kind of magic. In some places, that's a hanging offense. Rape, murder, rustling, and horse thieving are all also hanging offenses. So, this explains, how you become a marshal, how you become a sheriff. Sheriffs are elected, marshals are appointed. And then you've got the U.S. Marshals and Rangers, judges and courts. And then we get into superstition because there is deep weird in the world of Deadlands. This is where the weird part of Weird West comes from. There are some things that people just accept as a regular part of life. Some of the monsters that you run into, like prairie ticks, which are like giant bug creatures that attack you. Some of that stuff's just kind of around and people accept it. Some stuff is a little bit more mythical. The stuff that you find in the Tombstone Epitaph. That stuff that people aren't as readily able to believe in and have to see with their own eyes. That kind of stuff will, you might have to roll like a spirit roll if you run into something truly horrible. So, setting rules. This explains, kind of your single and double action. Dueling. Dueling has its own special set of rules. Basically, everyone gets action cards, but then the two duelers get hole cards. If you have certain edges, you get more hole cards. And the way that works is only the two duelists can attack each other. Your allies and enemies can mess with you in certain subtle ways. If they're caught, though, something could happen to them because it's dishonorable to disrupt a duel. Tests let you distract or make someone vulnerable depending on the cards that you have. And then in the third round, both players reveal their hole card, which determines who acts first and then attacks are handled as normal. Then there's, stampedes and hangings. And you get down into no man's land. This is, the desert. Talking about agencies and stuff like that. Favors. A lot of this stuff down here is based on archetypes and, like how you would run your archetypes. So, if you're an agent, these are things that you would know. Agent edges as well. The blessed, some stuff that's specific to you, chi masters. So these are all like, if you pick a certain archetype and you want a quick build. All right, Carl, have a good night. You can catch the end of this on YouTube if you want. We're just gonna wind down here for a few minutes. I'm glad that you encountered an old hag. Those are always fun. Harrowed, if you want to be undead. If your character dies, there's a chance that you can become harrowed, which is cool. Again, at that point, you're a zombie gunfighter. And you got your hucksters. But yeah, these basically explain, the edges and hindrances that you might want to take. Actually, it's mostly just edges and the requirements for, if you're playing in a certain... you're playing a certain archetype, this is what you're gonna want to take on. This explains, Hoyle's Book of Games, all that stuff. How to play a huckster. Dealing with the devil, of course. Because you have to do that. And then, hex slingers are those are your gunfighters. Who have magic. Mad scientists. We're just going to scroll past a lot of this stuff. Because, again, these are just, like, things that tell you about how to play these certain archetypes and what to take for them. And then down here you've got some new powers that you can only find in this game, like Ammo Whammy, which gives you the hex... If you have the hex slinging edge, you've got... these are different powers that you can activate through your ammunition. A lot of this is huckster and hex slinger stuff. Ghost Rain. Then you have the Reckoning, the Reckoners. And the Reckoners are like your devils here. They're kind of creating all the evil in the world. And then this is all about, marshaling. Marshals are the game masters for Deadlands. Pinnacle is selling a Marshal's badge now, which I got as part of my backer kit order. So I will have an official Marshal's badge that I will wear when I am running this game. Here's some fear levels. As for how, how scary you want your game to be. You can go all the way up to, fear level 6 is Deadlands, or Deadland, where everything's just, like, freaky and scary. I typically play somewhere around, like, a fear level 3 or 4, where, like, dark, scary things are around, but they're a lot rarer. Just because I'm not super into horror, but I do really like the setting. And I like to, not inundate people with that. Just have it be, like a kind of a low fantasy type thing. And then we're talking about, Ghost Fire Power, which is Ghost Rock weaponized, Ghost Rock Fever, which if you are too long exposed to it, you end up, huffing rock vapor and end up having these effects on you. And then there's being harrowed, which we should talk about. Because you can come back to life as a harrowed character, and then you have the Dominion table for the harrowed, which basically lets you kind of let the devil out of you. Because when you come back as a harrowed, you are essentially demon-possessed. And then hucksters, you've got the backfire table. If you turn up snake eyes on your dice. Mad scientist, these are all like tables for, madness, invention malfunctions, random telegraphs, superstition and suspicion. In like a small town, if you're doing too much magic stuff, you're probably going to get hanged. Then you've got, your veterans. At this point, you're, drawing cards to determine kind of, the side effect of you being a veteran of the Weird West. There's a cool piece. Fighting a sandworm. This talks a little bit about encounters. You can draw cards to kind of, determine how you begin the adventure, that kind of stuff. This is a lot of, like, random generation stuff or, random encounters, stuff like that. Complications. Random encounters again. Regional encounters based on, where you guys are. And I'm going to get down to, like, bestiary. This is, what your results end up being based on what you encounter or what could happen. Rail warriors are, like, organized crime on the railroad. It's cool. There's a ship table. This gets into adventure creation and stuff like that. Oh, we are out of memory. How about... Nope, we're good now. We're good now. There we go. The Weird West. This just explains all the backstory of the Weird West as well. Let's go up to the table of contents and just see, kind of what all there is to see. Left in the game. So this explains kind of everything that happened as far as, the Weird West before this. Explains the Great Rail Wars, the Civil War, all that stuff. Let's take a look at some of the monsters we have here, because Deadlands has some really cool monsters. So we'll go to 145. Come along now. Acrobat's starting to slow down on me a little bit here. So yeah, these are some of the rascals, varmints, and creatures that you can encounter, because there's lots of different enemies that you can encounter. So you've got your human enemies, your cowboys, your agents, your cultists, cult leaders. And the ones with the stars are, particularly powerful, kind of like on par with a player character. I believe those are called wild cards. So they'll have different kind of action decks that are more similar to what a player gets when it comes to Savage Worlds. Harrowed, Hexslinger. These are the rascals, the people you can encounter. And you're rolling on to Wichita Witch. Let's keep on going. Varmints. These are just like regular creatures that you can encounter. Creatures. This is where the weird stuff comes in. Animated hand. Automaton. Yes, there are killer robots in Deadlands. Aztec mummies. Black Regiment. These are like undead soldiers, essentially. Bloodwires, tumbleweeds, bone fiends, boogeyman, the burning dead, catamount, chinook, chupacabra, clockwork tarantulas, mechanical spiders. I love this. This game is great. Devil bats. I just want to get down to my favorite dusters. Little rabbit creatures. I want to get down to my absolute favorite monster in all of Deadlands, and then we can call it for the day. A glom. These are like bundles of corpses that just attack you. It's gross. It's cool. The Hangin' Judge. Here it is. The Hangin' Judges are 5 Confederate Circuit Court judges: Hiram Jackson, Cyrus Call, Luther Kirby, Moses Moore, and Marcus Lafayette. They were basically corrupt judges that would hang people who were in their way, essentially. And then, after a while, the Texas locals fought back, rounded them all up, and hung them from hanging trees along the Chisholm Trail. The Reckoners turned these judges into, like, undead, evil ghosts. So, this is what a hanging judge looks like. They're badass. They've got pistol scythes. And this is pretty much guaranteed to be like the first thing that my new Deadlands party will encounter. And so that's pretty much the core book. A lot of cool stuff in there. Real quick, I'm going to close this up. See if we can take a look at this. We're not going to go all the way through the Weird West Companion. It's just a collection of other additional stuff with additional edges, relics, details about running a spaghetti western or a horror game, more stories about how Deadlands goes, famous people, horse eater. So the two things we're going to look at real quick first are the relics, and then we'll go over to the famous gunslingers. So relics. Come now. There's some cool stuff here. Billy the Kid's hat. All of these things are different relics that will give you powers but also have a taint to them. Wild Bill Hickok's 6-shooters are here. Basically what those do... You can get Excalibur, which has no taint, so be careful about giving that to your players. Earp's badge. Glanton's scalping knife, the Guns of Jericho, The Holy Grail. Hoyle's Book of Games gives you different powers that you can find depending on the edition that you have. The 1769 edition is like the best version. Every huckster actually needs this. It's your spell book, basically. But some of these are better than others. Hoyle's cards give you a bonus to dealing with the devil. Wild Bill's 6 guns are all the way down here at the bottom. You can get the Sunbow. Wild Bill's 6 shooters. So they're Colt Navy revolvers. And unless you roll a critical failure, which is Snake Eyes, you can re-roll any ones on the shooting die. But if you're shot in the back when using these pistols, you add an extra 2d6 damage. So, those are the relics. Last thing we're going to talk about here, we'll go down here to the famous gunslingers. These are people that, you know, figures from history that can play a part in your game if you want them to. So, you know, this is where you'd find, you know, Calamity Jane, Coyote, Crazy Horse. Jesse James. Bat Masterson. Bloody Bill Quantrill's Rangers. So, you know, if you want that to be a thing in your game. Did I pass Doc Holliday? I feel like I probably did by this point. Now, he might be down with, like, Wyatt Earp and stuff like that, so. These don't appear to be in any kind of actual... Actually, no, some of these appear to be in alphabetical order. Got some additional rascals here. So yeah, the Earp should be, like, up here. Unless they're saving them. Yeah, they might be saving the Earp clan for additional books. You also notice that Wild Bill Hickok is not here. Yeah, so, yeah, the Earps aren't in here, and Doc Holliday's not in here, so I'm assuming they're saving them for a different book. Might be doing like not a Deadwood book, a Tombstone book at some point. So expect more people to show up at some point. So anyway, that is Deadlands. Let's switch back over to solo. That's Deadlands Reloaded. Plain and simple, it looks really cool. I am super excited to actually play the game. If you are interested in this, as of right now on Pinnacle's website, which is peginc.com, you can buy the Weird West Core Rulebook PDF, the Weird West Companion, Showdown at Sundown Adventurer, and the Crater Lake Chronicles for Deadlands Reloaded. That's what you can get right now. And those are all PDFs. Physical stuff will be showing up at some point, probably early 2021. Once I have them, you'll be able to get them yourself because I backed it. So, that is Deadlands done and dusted. Let's talk a little bit about what we've got coming up soon here. This Monday, let's see. Got my schedule pulled up here. Just want to make sure I got a name correct, because this Monday on Rollin' Bones, we are going to be discussing Band of Blades, which is a Forged in the Dark game. For those of you who like Blades in the Dark, it's the same product line here. Band of Blades we'll be discussing with Stras Asimovich, which will be really cool to do. I've been trying to get Stras on for a long, long time. He'll be joining us this Monday. Josh, I know you are super excited about this. Hopefully you'll be able to tune in. So that's what we've got going on next week. And next Saturday, what I'll be doing on the stream is I will be going over the build that I would use if I ever get to play a bard. And what I'm going to be doing, in addition to actually building out the character, is I'm going to be creating the miniature for this character on Hero Forge and using their color system that they have now to give you an image of what my character would be, as well as just building the character out. So that's going to do it for today's episode. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. And remember, whether you rolled a snake eyes or your dice exploded, I'm so glad that you rolled your bones with me, Ryan Howard, and I'll see you next time.